What's up, everybody? Toby Wayne from Toby Wayne Studios. So tonight I'm going to be painting up this Batman sculpt that I've done. Um, it's all completed and baked and cured. I even got the Bondo texture done, and I like to do that. I like to go back in with some Bondo and kind of give it some texture, but I'll have to drill the hole that'll slide down onto the base. But other than that, this thing is done. So we're going to jump right in and get to painting on this. I've got basically four colors I'm going to be working with today. I'm going to use this gray for the cowl. I'm going to probably use this dark gray for the shadows and to give a little depth to the cowl itself. Of course, I've got my flesh tones, and I have red that I'm going to be using for the washes to give a little bit of color to the cheeks and the lips and all that good stuff. So let's get in here. I'm going to go ahead and start with the gray, which is going to be, I don't know how well it's going to play up against this gray. It'll probably be, it's a pretty darn close color. I mean, you can see it's pretty darn close, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that, start getting him painted up here. Hope everybody's had a good day. We've been working some pretty long hours at my day job as a dental technician, so I haven't had a chance to get out here in the studio as much as I would like, but life happens, you know. So, and I'm going to try to just get as much coverage here as I can with this brush, and then I'll have to go back in and hit it with my fine detail brush to make sure that all the fine areas around the cowl and the mouth and all that good stuff get painted. So get a nice crisp line. And I am going to be using the blow dryer off and on, so you'll have to just excuse that. Good news is this stuff dries really, really quick, so that's nice. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a quick little second coat. I was thinking about doing some different paints, doing a different paint on this one rather than the traditional gray or dark gray, or blue. I could have done a blue or the black. Batman is pretty much awesome, no matter which way you paint him for colors. So I do like the gray, so I'm going to go ahead and go that route. And I think I'm going to have to start getting up into the all the little fine areas here, so I might switch out my brush. I like the shorter ears, kind of the Frank Miller inspired ears and paints. So I'm going to go ahead and blast this real quick. As much fun as watching paint dry. Let's see here. Yeah, that's not my favorite brush. There we go. So now I'm going to come up, and I'll be able to come back in and touch all this stuff up because I will be painting flesh tones on. In fact, I probably should have done the flesh tones first, but as they say, que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. So That's going to be kind of a challenge because the Super Sculpey Firm and this gray are so close in color. If I miss something, you know, if you look close, you might be able to see the Super Sculpey Firm. But I'm hoping that I can get everything here and not miss any spots. And I don't want to have paint pooling up on his nose there, so I'm going to blend that in. Pretty darn close colors. This was a fun little sculpt. I enjoyed this one. I've always been a huge Batman fan, and I think I posted a couple videos on actually sculpting it. So that was a lot of fun to do that. Hope everybody enjoyed those videos. Okay, so now I've got my flesh tones, and I'm going to use this brush to that one almost kind of looks a little dirty. I don't know if I got a very good cleaning job on that one. That brush looks terrible. So we're going to go ahead and go to a spare backup one. Or maybe we won't. Let me see if I can get in frame here. What do you think? That would be kind of worth it. Now the flesh tones are going to take a couple of layers. Usually I will just use a different wider brush to dab it in, which I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's going to cover more in the area, and then I'm just going to have to come back and touch up those gray spots. And I'm going to pass on the 5 o'clock shadow. Normally when I do a paint job on Batman, I will put a 5 o'clock shadow on him, but in interest of time and also ease, I am not going to do that. I'm going to just give him just a good old regular clean-shaven Batman. Okay, so there's my first layer of paint. Very simple. Just trying to get that first layer on. That's my beauty coat. I could go in with an airbrush if I liked using them, but I don't. So I'm just gonna, ooh, look at that. So look at that paint I just slopped on there. That's not good. So we're gonna go ahead and not panic, and I'm gonna just wipe that off with my finger, because I am gonna be going back and doing a touch up. But I don't want the paint to be so thick that it leaves a thick smear mark. I would have to take like a piece of, you know, very light sandpaper and go over it and knock down those high spots. Boy, I'm all over the place with this thing as far as the frame goes. Not staying in frame. So my apologies for that. Okay. Gonna hit this one again. You know, one of the other things I could do too, now that I'm looking around and I'm not seeing them. Oh wait, there they are. I found them. Is I could come back in with a makeup sponge, and this kind of gives me some nice coverage and nice texture. The sponge kind of raises it up a little bit and almost makes it look as if there are pores, which is I always liked that. I always liked using a makeup sponge. It just gives this great texture. Um, so it gives a nice pore look, the pores to the skin. And it probably isn't going to pick up in here, but I'm going to just keep on keeping on. You know what I mean? Okay. So enough of that. And now I'm going to come back in with my fine detail brush. And I'm going to hit up all these little areas that I'm not happy with as far as where the paint didn't quite reach up inside of those areas. And up by the cowl and the creases there. I'll kind of just give them one last little coat of the flesh tones. Make sure that those lips are covered in there. All right. It's always important to make sure that your paints are dried in between each layer. If not, you run the risk of your paints smearing and not looking very good. Now let's go back and touch up these gray spots here. Let me get in frame. Get a nice steady hand so you're not having to go back over it with the flesh. I need to get myself some better brushes. These brushes are just kind of nice. I just dabbed my paints, my gray. I was working on the gray, and then the next thing I know, I've got flesh tones on there. Not smart. Anyway, my paint brushes, I need to get some new ones. I'm needing to get some fine brushes. I could just make my own by taking some of these pre-existing brushes I have and just getting a pair of scissors and trimming them down, making very, very, very fine paint brushes, but I just have yet to do that. This is kind of the tedious part, is just going around and making sure that all those areas are nice and crisp with the finish lines for the paints. You don't want to have any sloppy looking areas of paint. This acrylic paint will have a tendency to get a little thick, especially if it's cooler. I've noticed. So that's why I do love a good wash, but I need coverage on this with this gray right now. So I really only use the washes for larger touch-ups or like in the face area when I go to do the reds, which you'll see here in a few minutes. Okay. I want to be really careful not to leave thick raised areas. So this is where I may have to come back in with a piece of sandpaper and very lightly sand it down. But we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen here. So far, it's looking pretty decent. Couple little spots. Being a perfectionist, it's really, really hard to let some of these little spots go. But we live and we learn. Okay. Okay, so I see a couple little spots where my flesh has my gray has bled over into my flesh. So I'm going to go back in and just oh so gently get just the tip of the paintbrush, a little bit of the paint to just touch up those spots. And we'll get those little areas squared away. And I see a couple flesh tone spots in my gray. So I'm going to go ahead and very carefully get just the tiniest little bit of paint, touch up into those areas. All right. Now I could get crazy squirrely and do like a wash and flow in deep inside that. I don't think this is going to pick up, but deep inside that little crevice there, there's just enough flesh bleeding over, and I need to learn to just let that go, but I can't do that. But I'm going to have to. So enough of that tomfoolery. All right. So now I'm going to go in with my reds. Very simple, one color red. And I've shown this on other videos before, and people find that pretty amazing that we can achieve this with just one simple wash of red. And you're going to watch how this is going to just come to life. I am going to need, however, I need to quit dropping paintbrush on me. I do need to get a hold of I did have one specific red sponge that I'd been using. Oh, there it is. Here it is. Yeah. So I won't need to worry about that. But I will come back in. And now this is where I'm going to just do and you can kind of see this off to the corner there. That is my wash. And very, very, very washed out right now. I'm going to set my... And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my watercolor brush, and I'm going to just oh so gently start to flow a little bit of this over the skin. And what it's going to do, and I'm going to have my makeup sponge here, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring the flesh tones to life. And it doesn't take much. And unfortunately, this brush, for some reason, looks like it had some junk on it, like some dried paint or something. So I'm going to kind of wipe that off the best I can. Let me give this a really good wash down because this is my wash brush here. So going back very, very carefully, just going over the washes with this. And what I'm doing is I'm building this up in layers, and I'm not going too heavy because that again is going to, it's easier to just go in super light doses than to try to lay it on really heavy and then try to go back and touch up those areas that were too heavy. Let me go ahead and dry this real quick. So there's a couple of those little black spots I was telling you about. We may end up with a 5 o'clock shadow after all. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just kind of start building up my my lips. And again, this is just straight up simple washes over and over, repetitive. And I'm going to just kind of do some around the chin area here. And the facial crevices. Right up around the cheek area, I'm going to kind of start doing some build-ups to give a little bit of rosy glow. I'm going to hit some on his chin here. Come over to this side. Light dabs. It's really hard to see on this camera here. For some reason this, but then again, when I get to when I actually pull this video up and watch it, it'll be fine. You shall see it. I always stress about that. And it's so silly because it picks it up all the time. Okay. I'm going to go over it with a little heavier of red around these lips to help make those pop. The cheeks, I'm going to start laying in that color a little bit more. When I go to spray this with a matte finish, and I've talked about this in past videos, for some reason that matte finish for some reason that matte finish wants to darken everything. So I'm curious to see how this is gonna go. We'll see what happens. Oops. Get up into those little crevices there. Breathes a little light into little life into Batman here. And I think I'm gonna come in around these little chin there, little dimples. I'm not sure what to call those. And I really should be using that water, this sponge here, but this, excuse me, this brush, but I'm really concerned because it looks like it's leaving little black residues, and I don't want that on my sculpt. So what do you think? Should we risk it? Well, it looks like it's working okay, so we're going to go ahead and try it. And this stuff is great. This one is a great one to use because it just has so much coverage. It's such a great little brush here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to water this down pretty heavy. Get a good water going on here. And I'm going to do just the tiniest little bit of speckling. Just a tiny bit. I don't know if this is a wise idea because I had a little bit of blue on there from before. So let's just do this. We're in the danger zone now. And it's going to be, you can see how it's speckling here. I'm going to just, oh so lightly, just the lightest. I'm going to go and take out most of it. I'm not liking that, folks. I think I'm going to pass on that. The sculpt is so small that it's I don't know. I don't want to run the risk of messing this up at this point, seeing that I haven't matte sealed this yet. So we're going to go ahead and just do a little bit more touch-ups around these little jowl areas here. And I'm going to do this little bit of an upper lip. Give them a little bit of color. Get in frame here for you. And I guess what I could do is actually give him a little bit of trickle of blood. That'd be kind of fun. Look underneath his chin here. All right. So now I'm going to do just kind of a little bit of a wash to tie everything in. Just the slightest little wash of red. Okay. I see a little spot up in here that I missed. Yeah, I'm gonna around this chin area a little bit more. And I'm going to make sure that in those crevices, this is where I was telling you that wash is going to come into play, where I can actually just take that wash and flow it in there, and then that'll kind of just tie it all together. And I'm going to do a couple more passes over those lips, because I want to darken those in a little. And I also want to darken in that chin just a tiny little bit there. Whale. And you know what? I think I am going to give him a little bit of blood trickle. What do you think? So let's what I do normally with blood trickle is I will start with a little bit of a watered down just to get my blood where I want it to flow. And in fact, sometimes I'll even come in with just a little bit of a water wash first, and that's going to set the tone for where that blood is going to trickle. And you'll see here, I just added just the tiniest little bit. Then I come back in with my paint, my blood, and you can see that the paint will just automatically take it right to where that water is. The water will pull the paint, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? We're going to give him a little bit of a busted up lip there, where he's got the blood pooling in there. And what I'll do is I'll go back over and gloss with that. And I am going to do a little bit of blood splatter. But this is such a small sculpt that it runs the risk of, hopefully it's going to be picking up here, but it's going to run the risk of splattering everywhere that I don't want it to go because it is so small, such a small sculpt. So just the tiniest little bit. There we go. Okay. And you know what? I think I want to add just the tiniest little bit more blood. Maybe just a tiny bit running. I'm just going to kind of, just a little bit off there. Okay. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to touch up all of those areas here on the sculpt that's gray, that the blood has kind of spattered over, just because it is kind of an overwashed area here, over spattered area, I should say. Let me just kind of touch up those spots. Wasn't ultimately planning on doing a beaten up Batman, but in this case, I think I will. And I guess I could leave the spatter down low. I guess I could have left it everywhere, but I don't think I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to matte seal this. Let me pause the video and then let me matte seal this, and then I will be back momentarily to finish up the second portion of this video. I shall return.